Well, greetings. I'd like to talk to you today about moral issues, morality, if you will, as a subject. Don't panic. I'm not going to preach. I just think that we used to discuss philosophy and morality and stuff of this nature years ago, and we don't seem to do it these days. We all have our own private moral standards. We do that. We live by that. It's how humankind gets by. It's how we get by. But as a society, I think we've rather dropped that. We're not talking about it. And I think a lot of the problems that we have today are because we're not discussing moral issues. We know that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. But what we don't know is quite why that's happening from a moral perspective. And I'd like to just cover a few of those points. And I just like to gallop through them with more questions than answers, but I find it, as far as morality is concerned, which is a fairly subjective subject anyway, if we don't get the questions right, we're never going to get the answers right, are we? So let's just have a look at a few things, and I've jotted them down. They're not in particular order of things, because what the point of this little clip is to get you thinking about it, to get you thinking about what the moral issues are of the day. Although I rather suspect that you already know most of them, but forgive me for reminding you. First of all, let's talk about the BBC. Let's talk at public service broadcasting. If you don't pay the BBC, whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you watch it or not, but if you have a machine in the corner capable of getting it, it's a criminal offence and you will be taken away and locked up. Now, personally, I think the BBC is a complete waste of time and I never watch it. But the one thing to sure it shouldn't be is a criminal offence not to pay them if you don't want it, when we have scores of free channels that we prefer and we're quite happy to watch. So there's a moral dynamic here. Should you go to prison if you don't pay the BBC, which you don't like and you don't watch? Surely a moral issue. And the BBC loves to take the moral high ground. Well, of course, they're actually in the ditch. They're in the moral ditch, not the high ground. That needs to be addressed. And Boris said he was going to address it, made no attempt to do so. So I think we need to look at that. It's a moral issue. Let's look at banks. In 2007, all the banks went broke. And the central banks supported them via the political system. And the political system of the central banks actually used taxpayers' money to bail them all out. So all these banks, with their massive salaries and their infrastructures, went broke because of their own chicanery and incompetence, stupidity and fraud. Billions went missing, but nobody went to prison. And ordinary people, the butcher, the baker, the cab driver, the hairdresser, had to pay the tax to pick up the tab. And we had to pick up the tab also to bail out the Irish banks. Never mind our own banks, the Irish banks we bailed out to the tune of billions. Is it right that the girl on the Tesco checkout or the Amazon delivery driver on minimum wages is taking the cleaners to pay fraudulent banks and bankers? Isn't it time we started sending some of them to prison? And incidentally, it's coming round again. It's coming round again. The banks are broke again because no changes were made. I give them a year or two and they'll all be down again and they'll be looking to the taxpayer to pick up the tab yet again. There's a moral dynamic here. Skin colour. I'm 71. I thought at long last, some years ago, decades ago, we got rid of the nonsense about selecting people for roles or jobs or whatever it happened to be on the basis of the colour of their skin. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. And yet it's come back. It's going on. And only last year, as you may or may not know, the BBC were advertising for interns, but they had to be ethnic minority. If you look now at the adverts, the retail adverts we've had all Christmas, 50% of them are ethnic minorities or certainly originally ethnic minorities. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there is. But what I am saying is it's discrimination on the colour of your skin. And if you have a skin this colour, you're behind the 8 ball now. I think it's disgraceful and I think we should stop judging anybody or selecting anybody on the basis of the colour of their skin. It's a moral issue. It's a big moral issue and has been for some time. And we're going backwards. The public sector. There are now millions of people in the public sector. Millions and millions and millions. the problem that we have, and it could be Quangos, it isn't all just Whitehall, it's the Town Hall, Whitehall, so on and so forth, the public sector. Well, we're supposed to be all in this lockdown business together, lockdown 3. Well, we're not all in this together, are we? We're not all in this together. If you're in the public sector, your pension is protected, your salary is protected, you're unsackable, you just sit at home. And it's the wealth creating sector that, of course, is feeling the pain. And thus, let's look at school teachers, one small branch of the public sector. We all know that no children get COVID. No children have died of COVID-19, don't we? We know that. That's just in the Office of National Statistics. We know that under 60, the recovery rate is something like 99%. And assuming that most school teachers are under 60 and physically fit. But they've closed the education system down to the detriment of our children for no risk, hardly any risk whatsoever. Now, I would say if teachers don't want to work, if they don't want to go to work, fair enough. I'm a libertarian, a free society. For the goodness sake, let's pay them for sitting at home. If you don't go to work, you don't get paid. And I'm afraid if you're in the private sector, if you're self-employed, small business, medium-sized business, there's no rescue for you. You go to the wall. We've all got to be in the same boat. And I would like to see something along the lines of what we did in the 1930s when we had a depression. I'd like to see some of the public sector salaries cut significantly until we come out of lockdown. And you might find that some of these people in the public sector weren't so damn keen on lockdown. It's a moral issue. What else have I got here? Well, now we're talking a lot about social media, aren't we? Social media who deplatforming all sorts of people, and they're cutting people, they're trimming numbers on of your followers. It happens to me all the time. This is another one of the problems. But see, I believe in a free society. I'm a libertarian. But if you want freedom to edit social media, Facebook, Zuckerberg and all these people, if you want to edit, you must have the responsibility of the editorship. You can't put your hands up and say, oh, it's nothing to do with me, but then edit politically, like Wikipedia, which has been printing lies about people all the time, me included. I've been trying to get the lies changed, and they say, no, it's just a platform, it's nothing to do with us, we don't edit. But we know they do, because if I try and put it right, or anybody, and I've spoken to left and right, and I've spoken to journalists and people who all say the same thing, you can't get Wikipedia changed, entries on Wikipedia changed. They've been politically edited. And I've gone to the very top of this. Well, that's a moral dynamic, isn't it? That's a moral issue. If you're printing copy about an individual, he surely should be entitled to the right of reply and the right to put things right if they're wrong. It's a moral issue. Science. Well, I tell you what's coming down the road, which people are, apart from the huge banking crisis which is coming down the road, it's this net zero business, which is going to be one of the most expensive things that we've ever attempted. But it's all based on a hypothetical situation of carbon dioxide, man-made carbon dioxide causing global warming. This is what it's all about. Well, you see, the only scientists you'll ever see are on the mainstream media accept that scientific hypothesis. But there are millions of scientists across the whole planet who don't. They believe it's solar driven or solar minimum, so on and so forth. And I'm not going down that argument now. I'm not saying yes it is or no it isn't. What I'm saying is, shouldn't they, before we go into this billions and billions of pounds net zero experiment, have their say in an open debate, like we did with Brexit? We had months of open debate on TV, both sides, and then we could all make our own mind up. At the moment, there is no debate at all about net zero. No debate at all, and it's going to be extremely expensive. Government spending. I come on to government spending as a moral issue. 100 billion, it looks like, on the high-speed rail too. A railway that nobody seems to want, which is ripping up woodlands, which is driving coach and horses through estates and new estates, knocking down houses, for something I can't see that there's any value in at all. 100 billion. We're giving £12 billion abroad with no audit trail. It's called foreign aid. And yet we have people sleeping rough on our own streets. We're sending it away. There's a moral dynamic here, surely. Let's look at charities. The charity bosses are on salaries that you could only dream about, probably, watching this clip. 150,000, 180,000 a year. For charities. These people don't seem to have any shame. Surely that's a moral issue. If you take £1 or £2 coins off a little old lady, old age pensioner in the street rattling your tin to save the panda or save the Siberian tiger and so forth, surely to goodness that chief executive of that organisation shouldn't be earning as much as a merchant banker. It's a moral issue, isn't it? Or isn't it? What do you think? As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based. And I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.